So for today's class, what we're going to do is that we're going to continue to look at globalization, and more so, we're going to look at the global institutions. So there are several global institutions that we would have looked at during the common hour. We looked at the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, World Trade Organization, the World Bank. So those are three institutions, global institutions that we have looked at. So today I want to zero in on the IMF and the policies of the IMF and how the IMF policies had some negative impact on countries like Jamaica, Caribbean countries overall. Give me a second, please. All right, ladies. So I'm now going to look at the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. And I'm not going to go in depth because we would have already covered some of these in the common hour. Now, the role of there are three main global institutions, three main global, you have quite a lot, but there are three main global institutions that aim is to facilitate globalization, right? And one of that is the World Trade Organization, the IMF, and the World Bank. Now, the World Bank provides finances for development projects. So if you're a poor country or any country at all in the world, more so very weak countries, developing countries, we do not use the word third world. We say developing. There's no such thing as a first and a third because where's the second? So either you're developed or you're developing. And so the World Bank provide finances to developing countries for projects. So for example, they need some schools to build and they don't have the money as a country, you can go to the World Bank, borrow the money and they will build schools, right? As a poor country or developing country. The IMF, on the other hand, ensure that the country's finances are running. So they give money, not really to specific projects, but they give money in order for the country to be stable, to help the country to be financially stable. And then the World Trade Organization operates like a trade court that regulates trade between countries of the world. So those are the three main institutions. Now, we would have gone through several of these already. And one of the ruling of the World Trade Organization would have led to the destruction of Caribbean banana. So that is one negative of the World Trade Organization. Because at the time, Jamaica and other Caribbean countries like St. Vincent, St. Lucia, they had a preferential agreement with Britain because they were all colonies of Britain. And they, because of this agreement, the Lomé Convention, they were able to send in 105,000 tons of fruits per year to England without paying any tax. The United States didn't like that, so they took the Caribbean to court and they said the Caribbean should not get the preferential agreement. And so as a result of that, Caribbean bananas, the industry of Caribbean bananas would have been destroyed significantly as a result of this WTO ruling. Now, move along, IMF. The IMF, when our countries are in deep financial problems, where you have a high unemployment, there's no economic growth, there's poverty, you're in debt, you can't pay your teachers, you can't buy the medicines for the hospital, medication, you can't do anything. When countries are in debt, like in terms of or maybe you're in a situation where you have a volcano, so the country is basically locked down, or you have storm after storm, or you just cannot finance your books. You can't do what you're supposed to do, right? In situations like this, the IMF comes, the country goes to the IMF and says, listen, IMF, we can't pay our teachers. We don't have any money. We are not producing as we should. Our country is in serious financial problem. And so we need money to help with our development. And the IMF usually give these countries money, usually. The World Bank, on the other hand, if you need a specific program, so for example, you need to build a hospital, you don't have the money to build a hospital, you go to the World Bank and they will lend you the money to build a hospital. The same thing with schools, roads, and all of these different stuff. They help with certain programs. So that's the role of the World Bank. Now, why IMF and the World Bank? A lot of countries go to the IMF because they are indebted, they have a low level of capital investment. Most of the money that is usually within the particular country are left the country, so people move away with the money, capital meaning money, they take the money outside of the country, and you have a series of natural disasters that basically cripples the economy. And it could be that it's an external shocks where other parts of the world, you have the economies of the world crumbling, and that affects your local economy. And so you're not able to perform well as a country. Now, once you're in that situation, you go to the IMF, and the IMF said, in order for you to get money for either development, to be either for development project, or we just lend you money to balance your books, you need to first be a member of the World Bank or the IMF. So they are not going to disperse funds if you're not a member of the IMF, the World Trade Organization, and the World Bank. So you must be a part of all those three institutions in order for your country to benefit. Now, before you go on to benefit from that, the IMF is going to say, all right, this is a letter of intent. So the letter of intent means that before I give you the money, you need to do some things to fix your country's economy. So that is called per actions, or the conditionalities, right? And actions that you're going to take while the economy is being restructured, because you need to restructure your economy so we don't have to be always giving you money. That's the IMF policy. But the IMF has never had a successful policy. Nowhere in the world. Nowhere. Never had a successful policy. The World Bank is good because they give money and help with the development of countries in terms of building schools and all of these different stuff. But I've never seen a successful IMF program. Jamaica would have gone through several IMF programs, and we are still in the same predicament. Just about 2 years ago, the current government would have said that they finished the IMF program that we would have started in 2010 under Bruce Golding, continue under Simpson Miller government, and Jamaica is still in the same predicament, same problems. So I've never seen a successful IMF program nowhere in the world where a country at the end of a program can say, look at us, we are successful, we don't have to go back to the IMF. However, so the letter of intent has two things in it. One, you have preconditions, things that you need to do, and per actions, what you're going to do while the country is is being reformed. So the IMF is going to tell you certain things that you have to do. And one of the biggest thing that the IMF, or biggest policy of the IMF, is that your exchange rate, the value of your currency, need to devalue. According to the IMF, if you devalue your currency, then your goods could be cheaper on the world market. But we should ask ourselves, with all the devaluation that we have had over the years in Jamaica and Guyana, I could include Guyana, have we benefited from it? Because Guyana and Jamaica are the two countries that have a very, in terms of devalued currency. So you have the exchange rate, domestic credit creation. So IMF also said that you need to have increase the interest rates. So if you're going to borrow loans from the bank, people in the country, the interest rates are going to be very high, right? If you want a mortgage, your interest rate is going to be high. Anything that has to do with interest, it's going to be high, because these are things, are conditions that the government signed to. Other conditions, which are, some of them are very good, some of them are good. So one of them is anti-corruption measures. In developing countries, we have a lot of corruption. So when you're going to an IMF program, they are going to say you need to put measures in place to curb corruption. So that's a plus for them, because we do have a lot of corruption here, right? But another problem that we're going to have, which is, I don't know if it is a positive or a negative, the IMF is going to say that the country need to privatize their public service. So you have JP, you have a utility company, you need to privatize that. If the country own a bus company, you need to privatize it. Any company that the government owns, you need to sell it to private individual. And most time, the private individuals that the country is going to sell these things to are private people from outside the country. So if you look at Jamaica right now, the JPS, which is our utility company, is owned by an American firm. So every time you pay JPS, with all the high bills that coming in, most of that money goes back to the United States in, what you call it now, back to the United States in profit, because it's a company and they need to make money. And so don't think that they are doing you a service. And so anti-corruption measures, the privatization, these are some of the conditionalities. Other conditionalities involve that you should reduce your, the government should remove subsidies from food. Because back in the days, the government used to put subsidies on food, meaning that they used to pay a portion of the food bill. So if flour on the international market increased from $1 to $1.50 US, the government would still continue to sell the flour for $1 and the government would pay that 50 cents. Same thing with fertilizer. So the IMF program is saying, because of all of these problems, why your country is in problem, because you're subsidizing food, you're subsidizing fertilizers, you're subsidizing petroleum, and you need to stop that. Another prescription of the IMF is that you need to reduce the number of persons that the government employs. So if you have teachers, listen, you need to ensure that all the classes, one teacher covers 2 or 3 classes, because you need to reduce the bill. Don't employ enough teachers, don't employ enough doctors, because you cannot afford it. And you can't use our money that we're giving you to pay for salaries. So these are some of the programs. Another thing that the IMF is going to come in with is that taxes for goods coming into the country are basically going to be free. So you're going to remove taxes. And if you're removing taxes on goods coming into the country, then you are creating a free market where our local businesses, they have to pay taxes, but those who are coming into the country, they do not have to pay taxes. And so that is going to create some problems for our country. So what are some of the effects of the IMF programs in the Caribbean? One, you have tax holidays that is going to, for them, if you provide tax holidays, that is going to drive investment. Foolishness. Trade policy, if you remove quota from import goods, you remove taxes from import goods, then guess what? You are going to be able to have more goods on your market. So your citizens can choose from several different goods. But right now, if I go to the supermarket, if I go to Price Mart, and I see there are two ketchup that is beside each other. You have Heinz, which is a US brand ketchup, and you have the Lasco and what the other one name again? Grace Kennedy ketchup. And the Heinz ketchup is cheaper than the US ketchup is cheaper than the ones that were made here, the Lasco and the Grace Kennedy. Same thing with a lot of fruits and vegetables. The American carrot is cheaper. All the North American food is way cheaper than the local fruits and vegetables, with the exception maybe of grape. But we don't do grape here. So that is going to cause serious problems. Now, the exchange rate, one policy of the IMF is that you reduce the value of the currency. And if you control the exchange rate and reduce that exchange rate, every time the dollar devalues, you are going to pay more for food. You're going to pay more for services. A perfect example, there are students' tuition here in Jamaica that is tied to the US dollar. Every time the US dollars go up, they are getting paid in Jamaican dollars. So they are paying more money each time the value of the Jamaican dollar, the dollar declines, the Jamaican dollar declines. And so that can have negative impact. Same thing, a lot of places in Kingston now renting in US dollar. People not getting paid in US dollar and they're renting places in US dollar. And so, and if your earning is from US, I don't know how we end up in this mess, but this is some serious mess right here. If we are getting money in US, if we are getting our profit in US dollar, we're getting paid in US dollar, then every time the Jamaican dollar declines, you pay more for rent. There are some investment programs that people have that is linked to the US dollar. Every time the US dollars increase and the Jamaican dollar devalues, they have to pay more money. And also, if the government is going to reduce subsidies in terms of food prices, then people are going to pay more for food. That's why the food bill is so expensive. With all the things that you hear people talk about out there with the government and all of this different stuff, the salaries are not increasing and the food prices are continuously increasing. Cutting social spending, reducing the public sector. A perfect example, before I go to that, when we look at the Jamaican dollar, in 1969, the Jamaican dollar was one US was $1.20. By 1980, that was $1.78. 1989, one US dollar was worth 5 Jamaican 77 cents. By 2017, $1 was worth 128. Right now it is 152. And I'm telling you, by the next 10 years, it could be that $1 is going to worth 500 and plus Jamaican dollars. So, as a result of that, IMF programs right across the Caribbean, we are going to have loss of revenues, uh, meaning if import goods are not coming into the country, well, if goods coming into the country have some level of tax holiday where they don't have to pay taxes, then the government is going to lose revenue. And if they're going to lose revenue, the government must find a way to fill that gap. And what they're going to put that increase on is property tax and GCT, which other Caribbean countries call VAT. And if they are going to reduce social spending, that means that you're going to have less money for health care, less money to put in the school, less money to pay teachers, less money to pay nurses. Problem. And if you're going to reduce, ensure that most of the money go to debt payment, because as you borrow from the IMF, you need to pay back most of that money. So in fact, I believe in Jamaica, for every dollar that the government earns in Jamaica, 80 cents goes back to paying debt. So the government only has 30 cents to do everything: fix road, pay teachers, pay everybody, buy medication. 30 cents, what 30 cents can do. And so those are some of the negative effects. Now I'm going to look at, I've been looking at Jamaica, but I want to point to the Barbados experience in 1993. Jamaica would have had their IMF program. Jamaica has had several IMF programs. Barbados is currently in an IMF program now, but they had an IMF program in 1993 where the IMF stipulates that they reduce public sector, meaning that they need to lay off workers, government workers, devalue the currency because the Barbados dollar is $1 to 2 Barbadian, and reduce social services. Now, you know, Barbados have the free education. Now, the Barbadian people during this period said, listen, we're not going to want to reduce our public sector or the Bajan dollar. No, 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 we don't want to reduce the value of our currency, and we're not going to cut social services, especially to end free education. No, because one Barbadian prime minister would have noted, David Thompson, he said Barbados is more than an economy. Barbados is a society. And so because Barbados is not just an economy and it is a society where people live, you can't think about people in terms of dollars and cents or numbers. You have to think about people as social being and improving the people. So that's David Thompson. And so as a result of that, the Barbadian people decided that, listen, we are not going to follow these prescriptions. So what we're going to do to help the government is to reduce the salary. And all the people decided that their salaries were going to reduce. So they cut the salaries significantly. Now, I want to share with you also about, where it is, yes, the experiences by Jamaica, and listen to what Michael Manley had to say in his interview shortly before he died.
Farming, which is the backbone of our economy, so to speak, you find that the very farmers who farm them produce. Yeah, right now you have tons of cabbage of waste in Jamaica because goods coming in from America selling cheaper
than what produced
than
here.
what can be produced here.
Of course it is.
So you find it's just extracting more than putting in.
The Jamaica that I knew, the Jamaica in which I grew up, is not the Jamaica that you, a tourist, would see now. That Jamaica no longer exists. That Jamaica no longer exists, partly for the usual reason, the passing of time, and partly because of this new global economy.
When you say the onion producing this year, you can look at every house or every yard that you see around here. Everybody, all young, middle age, involved in picking out onion, sowing onion, reaping onion, bagging up onion. So everybody was involved in the production in this district. But right now, it is just a trickle, just a brave one them.
When it's ready for harvesting, you see imported potato right out in front of your home being sold. Potato that's grown in Idaho or New Brunswick or some other parts.
Hello? The shipment come every week, you know. Them can Irish, the US, but the America, the one in Canada. And the red peas, they sell America.
When I was a little boy, I grew. Everybody that you see around here, their livelihood was planting peanuts. All those days are over. Over and gone.
All this land is what we used to farm carrots. Now we cannot farm anymore. We don't got any market for it. Because through the foreign carrots.
It's an insult to our dignity of not being able to produce and sell in your own market at home.
This is a free market, and I've learned that because of the financial problem that the government is under with the World Bank and the IMF. They are the one who institute the pressure on the government as far as we learn. Now we had a thing named protective market. The government said no import. And then now we compete with one another. But for the time being, you're open to the world to compete with the world.
Before, we was unable to bring in anything because of the policy of the country. But lately it changed.
The difference with the person who comes in from foreign with his trailer is that he has now been given legal right to bring it in. So I'm not fighting him. I'm fighting the policy maker, the person who is foolish enough to sign such a policy.
Some of the prescriptions an IMF program usually seeks to implement is to get countries to eliminate artificial barriers to trade. They would require a country with an IMF program not to impose artificial restrictions on imports and not to unduly subsidize exports.
So when the person brings on his trailer, whether he's in Kingston or up here, whether a farmer gets smart and get on the trailer line, he will fill his pocket of money. But what will happen to the other thousands of farmers? So you're fattening a few people at the expense of a whole culture that took years to build up. You destroy it with a stroke of the pen.
He holds the handle and you hold the blade. I mean, you know, if you want the money badly enough, then you have to agree to his terms. So ultimately, the IMF usually gets most of their own way.
Why did we think they should reduce trade barriers? The reason is that Jamaica is a very small country. It's not a country which could sort of thrive by producing only for itself. We believe very firmly that countries are going to grow better if they're integrated into the world economy, and that means reducing tariffs. And it needed to allow its importers its people access to goods from the rest of the world, rather than have them rely on this little economy.
Market vendors also complained about the large number of foreign fruits and vegetables on the market, saying all of the foreign foods were hurting their business.
The foreign Irish, the foreign carrot, the foreign ginger, everything full of the market.
But the supermarkets seem to be doing well with overseas produce, as they're being sold for less than the local produce. So you're saying that the foreign lettuce and carrots are less expensive than the local lettuce and carrot?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
When you open up the marketplace, those who are in a better position to take advantage of the market do so.
We import the spray, we import the fertilizer, we import the seed. So what we have to put in? Only sunlight and our impact. And if we use that right, we produce a better quality thing, but at a high cost. We use machine to farm, but the world in general use machine. So when you check it out, can machine compete with machine?
The farming section is nearly completely wiped out.
Anything that led to the more self-reliance on our resources was strongly discouraged because of this emerging ideology, which we now call globalization.
My name is Tom Lipitsky. I'm with the United States Potato Board, and we represent about 6,000 potato producers in the United States. One of the markets which we found to be of very much interest is right here in Jamaica.
Get you up here, Mr. Harrison. There we go. Well, okay. Everybody say potato. Potato. Jamaican potato. Jamaican potato.
We had offers from Washington from some guys, a group of guys. We asked them what they wanted to buy from us, and there wasn't anything that they could buy from us. They just wanted to sell us potato seeds. We are not short of potato seeds. That's not our problem.
I'll give you a joke. You talk about get goods in the United States. I signed a contract to produce honeydew melon and cherry tomato. And you know what happened? Everything I send to the package, they turn it down, say it not reach the standard. They say don't package good. The size that we have is not meshing with their size. And the system went on so rotten with me that you know what I did? Discarded total.
NAFTA or whatever they call them, a free enterprise. They're not free, they flow like the Mississippi. It flows in one direction into the Gulf of Mexico. It never goes back up the hill. And whereas the Gulf of Mexico can absorb it, Jamaica cannot absorb the flow from Europe and from North America, all coming in on us. This is our country, our turf. Give us back our market. Don't try to force your idea on us.
So right there we have the farmers who's on that documentary, which is Life and Death. They spoke about the negative impact that the IMF agreement had, in which the government were forced to liberalize the sector by allowing a lot of imports into the country, remove that protective market that we had.
Access.
Men from America selling cheap.
We have this dairy farm has been going from in the early 40s. My father farmed here before me. It was on a continual rise in production.
The industry flourished from 18 million litres a year to over 30. I think we peaked at around 34 million litres in 91.
In 1992, the government entered into an agreement with the Inter-American Development Bank for a loan of about $50 million US, which was to support agriculture and manufacturing. The conditionalities of those were that we should abandon any form of local subsidies, and we should abandon any control of the imports of milk powder, meats, and what have you.
Almost always when the IMF is lending to a country, a developing country, we'll be making loans, the World Bank will be making loans, and if it's in the Americas, the Inter-American Development Bank, which is a regional counterpart of the World Bank, will be making loans.
So, you couldn't get World Bank unless IMF gave you the bill of health, and you couldn't get IMF unless the World Bank gave you a bill of health, and you couldn't get either unless the Inter-American Development Bank gave you a clean bill of health. Cross-conditionality. That is when they finally had you by two nooses by the neck.
And because we're working together in that country, we have to make sure we're not working at cross purposes. So we will generally agree on what needs to be done.
In conjunction with the loan agreement, and at the same time, the World Trade Organization signed off all the member countries into this new world order of trade. This new world order means that there will be no government regulation in the trading of any commodities.
They're telling you that, well, look, if we lend you $50 million, in return you have to lower all your trade barriers, and you have to compete with us on a level playing field. Well, that is all double talk.
It was at this time that the competition from reconstituted milk started to get severe.
We ended up with having an influx of powder which destroyed the dairy industry. Powder became normal form of milk consumption, and the dairy industry was unable to sell their fresh milk.
Frank Quarry says he's been supplying fresh milk to Century Farm Products for 15 years. After last Sunday's collection, he says he was told that the company had too much milk and would not collect any more for an indefinite period. So on Friday, with nowhere to take 5 days worth of milk, he had to get rid of it.
Dairy cows have to be milked twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. So yesterday and today's milk, if it's not collected, you have to pull the bung and let it out in the drain.
This farm produced about 3,000 imperial quarts of milk per day. We are now down to just about 600 liters per day. The animals that we lost represented a lot of hard work from a lot of pioneers, my dad included, and it obviously was a very, very difficult decision to make when we decided to convert them into hamburger meat. It's incredible how are we able to get reconstituted milk in Jamaica for less than fresh milk when it has to be produced at a greater cost than fresh milk. It is because it is just one of a product mix in countries where they price some products to carry others, and it's really just a huge surpluses.
In certain areas, the Americans subsidize their exported milk powder 137%. Now nobody can compete with that. Jamaica and the IMF and the Inter-American Development Bank, we ended up with these policies. Ultimately, I suppose our government have been visionless and weak-kneed.
That's it for today, ladies. When we return on Monday, we're going to start integration. And on Thursday, I believe Wednesday and Thursday, you'll do the presentations that you are preparing currently. All right, ladies, enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Thank you. Same to you.